Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zeus Kerravala from ZK Research, and I'm here at GTC 2026 in San Jose. I'm obviously inside the Expo Hall. I'm at the Equinix stand with John Lin, Chief Business Officer of Equinix. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Zeus. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's another year, another GTC. For my viewers, though, I think this is your first time on with me. So can you just talk a little bit about your role, and then also how Equinix is, the company that really powers the infrastructure behind AI?
Sure, appreciate it. So I'm John. I run all of basically our global markets organization, deciding where we're building data centers, how much capital we're allocating into that, as well as running the global P&L. And also with the other side of my brain, I run all of product engineering, product development, and product strategy.
Yeah, and so how's the show been for so far? It looks like really busy here, huh?
It's been fantastic. It is a bit of a zoo here, as it is every year, but in particular, I think the last 3 years, you're continuing to see the momentum build, the bow wave. And what's really interesting is the diversity of participation this year around like the community that's coming here to learn about AI. It's no longer just like AI and data scientists. It's more around application expertise, like vertical expertise and business unit owners trying to figure out how to apply this into their business.
Yeah, I feel like we're moving AI out of the vision phase and into the doing phase, which is of course good for everybody because now we're making money instead of just talking about making money, right? And that came across, I think pretty clearly in Jensen's keynote. In fact, one of the more interesting topics he brought up, I thought, was just how the architectures behind AI are changing, right? And I know now that AI is moving from, across clouds, data centers, edge locations, we're able to do different things. And so the Equinix, of course, having some of the biggest edge footprint around. What are you seeing your customers do today with these different architectures that maybe they weren't doing before?
Yeah, so Equinix has 270 plus data centers across 77 markets in 37 countries around the world. And it's focused around trying to get our data centers and locations to house infrastructure for customers as close to the end user or the workload that matters for that end user is going to be. And so what we're seeing most recently around AI is it's moving more and more from AI training, which will continue to exist and probably continue to grow. But that was like the front side of how can we start building models that are useful for economics, for business, et cetera. Now it's taking those models and deploying them where the end users are, where the factory is, where your business partner is, or where your data lives. And that's very much in these edge locations.
Yeah, and so as we move from training to inferencing out at the edge, the network plays a much more important role, correct?
Amen. Yeah, it's and the network's playing a different role for a number of different areas. Like the first is, for the enterprise at large, their data sources exist everywhere, right? We talk about distributed AI, and that's distributed across like two different dimensions. One is they're in different clouds, they're in different SaaS providers, they're across different data lakes, they're across different technology stacks, even across their own enterprise. The second is distributed geographically, right? Their data needs to be in different sovereign areas. Again, we're focused mostly on multinational enterprises that are of the largest scale. They've got data footprints that when they're using AI, they may be able to train that AI against bulk data sets, be able to take that model, but when they're using it against now actual customer data, it needs to say resident at location, in country, et cetera. And so that two forms of distributed come to play largely. And that network is incredibly important, right? It's both, it needs to be high performance, high throughput, low latency, but it also increasingly needs to be sovereign. The customer is expecting to know, hey, what locations is my network actually traversing in that path? And for a long time, the world at large has thought about the network as just a dumb pipe. That's not going to work in the new world.
Yeah, no, that's, in fact, the network plays a critical role in how AI applications perform. In fact, one could say that you can't really do AI with the network, right? And so, networking and AI is interesting because the networking traffic for AI is growing just orders of magnitude more,
exponentially,
right, than traditional enterprise applications. And so how are you helping the customers deal with both the interconnection and the speed requirements to keep that latency low to make sure those AI applications actually are performant?
Yeah. The first is just spending time with customers to understand really their workloads, their use cases, their data sources, and mapping all of that architecture out. And I think what a lot of organizations have struggled to do is to be able to pull back from their individual vertical application workloads and architectures to look at the big picture around where is that data stored, et cetera. And again, our viewpoint from being a neutral provider that's partnered with all the cloud providers, partnered with all the technology providers to be able to help them zoom out a little and see where all that flows are coming and going from is useful. The second area, though, that we talk about a lot is bringing all of the advantages of being a scaled service provider to the enterprise. So the way the internet has scaled is because all of the network providers have brought their network cores into our facilities, and then they can literally pull a piece of fiber from one network to another network. In the same way, we're helping the enterprise develop and scale their infrastructure. An enterprise customer at our site can pull a piece of fiber, a piece of glass, directly from AWS to their network. And in some cases, for the neoclouds or for the foundational model makers, they're deploying hundreds of cross connects to these different cloud providers. And that gives you an example of the size and scale that they need the traffic to flow. But it's also super easy because it's literally just pulling that glass inside of one building.
Yeah, now talk about, though, the innovations you've had recently, because I know you recently rolled out 400 gig physical ports and 100 gig fabric virtual connections. And so just talk about that rollout and, maybe how some customers will leverage that.
Yeah, it's even more just the reflection of the amount of throughput that customers need to be able to pass all of this data traffic is increasing, right? And so, years ago when we first started our fabric product, that connectivity might have been 1 gig VCs or 10 gig VCs. Now, again, customers are expecting 100 gig VCs or multiples of that, being able to pull all of that together to move massive amounts of data into their AI environments. And a really important thing to remember is AI is some of the most expensive infrastructure on the planet, obviously, but it's incredibly cost effective at generating business results, but only when you can keep feeding it data. And so the more data that you can feed into these AI structures, the more tokens it can generate for you on a per kind of hour basis. So the more network capacity you have, the more scale you have there, the more efficiency you can get out of your AI infrastructure.
Yeah, and you also offer private connections, right?
Yeah.
Which are, I think more and more customers trying to understand the advantages over using the internet.
Yeah. No, I mean, the internet is the easy button for all data traffic. You don't have to think about it. It just flows until it doesn't work. And then you have no idea why it doesn't work or what's broken along the path. And so private interconnection allows enterprises to have a guaranteed, survivable, high scale, high throughput, secure pathway between themselves and whoever their counterparty is.
Yeah. Now, one challenge for AI, especially in distributed environments, is maintaining governance and security across that distributed environment. And so how do you approach governance and data control without slowing innovation? And then in that, I'd wrap in, since you are global, data sovereignty has become a big issue. In fact, that was at Davos.
Yeah.
I think it came up in every discussion I had, right? And so you've got to be able to adhere to those local regulations, but yet maintain consistency and yet not slow innovation down, right? Yeah.
No, that's right. And
that seems a very Rubik's Cube of security problems. Right?
It is. Yeah. And we're still early in the cycle around all of this. The AI transformation wave over the last 2-3 years has been amazing, but I think about this as a 10 or 15 year cycle. The same way kind of the internet was ultimately for it to become mature and scaled and solving for all of the things the same way cloud was, the same way mobile was. It's a decade-long cycle around that. And I think the answers to those questions in some cases are still to be had, right? I look at, OpenClaw and the development of agents that are out there now. I was just having a great discussion with a number of peers in industry around how are you using OpenClaw and how much permission are you letting those agents have? Have you given them your bank credentials? And the answer universally is no. I mean, no one's trust level is that high, but I think the guards that our entire industry are going to need to present and create around standards around that, standards around security and policy management to make sure that we can have assured success around that, that's going to be necessary to actually allow broadband deployment.
Yeah, and so you bring up an interesting challenge, right? And that companies need to keep the data safe, but yet they do need to send the data to the models for inferencing purposes, right? And so those to me seem like two diametrically opposing forces.
It is. I think part of it is comfort and trust with your vendors, right? And it's there's incredible amounts of technology in stacks there. There's every day there's probably another unicorn generated from AI technology, but most of those are in the B2C world, right? In the B2B world, the number of folks that are actually trusted, have been there, understand the importance of this data, and also need to be able to support mission critical applications now. That's a much smaller universe of companies, and the large cloud providers, the large neo cloud providers, they understand the complexity associated with that, and they want to make sure they're supporting that. So I do think it is, I think, top of mind for every enterprise. This is not, I'm generating cat pictures for, my homepage. This is, I'm actually assessing financial risk. I can't get this wrong. Or I'm generating a response in an ER for a patient therapeutic. Like, I can't be questionable around that. I can't have my AI hallucinate around that use case. Like, that's top of mind for all of them. Like, hey, how do we make sure that we actually are the provenance and also the result of that answer has the highest degree of accuracy?
Yeah. Now, I know you also recently announced the partnership with Palo Alto Networks. And so what's the problem you're trying to solve there? And how do you bring that to customers?
Just what you were saying, like what we're seeing now, we're moving away from the early stages of how do I get point A to point B connected. We've solved that largely with Fabric. Now it's how do we make sure that that pathway is also secured? How do we make sure that data is being governed in the right ways? There's auditability and accountability of that. And all of the network security providers at large are key to that. Palo Alto has been a great partner with us, great technology tool set to bring to bear against the AI problem.
Yeah, the security part of it's interesting, and the partnerships there become important. It's interesting that security historically has been the antithesis of business. When you ask businesses about security, they hate it because it gets in the way, right? And I saw Matt Garman, AWS CEO, talk about this, where he was discussing how if you put a plank between two mountains and you across a canyon, you'd crawl across because it's inherently riskier, right? But if you put up handrails, you'd run across because the guardrails are in place. And so as we get more mature about this and as there's more partnerships like you have where you can infuse security in the network, do you think we can actually change the perception of security where with AI, if I have the right security in place, it's no longer a business inhibitor, but it actually lets me run and not crawl. Therefore, I can take advantage of security faster.
Absolutely. It's a combination of you're taking advantage of the security and the guardrails in place, but it frees you to know that the environment you're using for your AI is secure enough that trust, right? And even for our internal use cases at Equinix as an enterprise, the early days of AI were definitely like, hey, we had individuals using different sets of models, but being able to then build an AI infrastructure and thinking about ourselves as how do we drive tasks across the enterprise as AI first, we needed to build a robust environment to be able to support that. And once you have that environment with the kind of industry-leading tools, but secure to make sure your data is private and we're not leaking any of our confidential information, it allows the enterprise at large then to be able to use that at scale and really explodes the amount of adoption.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the update. Want to have a little fun and do a little rapid fire lightning round questions? Okay. First one is centralized versus distributed. 2025 was the year of the AI factory, i.e. centralized training.
Yep.
Is 2026 the year of AI edge, i.e. distributed inference?
I think 2026 is the start of it, and it will be forever going to be around AI inference. Again, as Jensen said as well, AI inference is about revenue generation and business impact. AI training is about developing the capability to do inference. And so we've, at this point in the industry, gotten enough training, I think, done. It's going to continue, obviously, like I said, it's going to continue to scale to some degree, but inference is going to be the explosion going forward.
All right. Now, how about the agent factor? We're hearing at GTC and every event I go to a lot about agentic AI. What's the one thing infrastructure must provide to make autonomous agents viable?
Yeah, I think security and assurance is the most important element. Obviously, you need performance. Obviously, you need kind of scale around that. Obviously, you need the best models enabled to be able to provide the right answers. But if you don't have security and assurance around that, I think everyone's going to hesitate around adoption.
Okay, now how about a sustainability question? With 3 gigawatts of capacity in the pipeline, what's the most underrated technology for making AI data centers green?
Oh, well, I mean, everyone hears about liquid cooling, and there's a lot of people that are worried liquid cooling is using up all this water. And I just say liquid cooling involves a closed system, right? It's we're able to actually very efficiently use these water loops. And I think just at large, that perception around water utilization is one where it can be efficient in some cases to evaporate water and lose water to be able to generate gains. But for the most part, all of that can be solved with dry chillers and dry coolers, and you can actually have a very efficient water use.
Jensen showed hot water cooling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now, NeoCloud question. You're partnering with NeoClouds like Grok and Nebius, right? in one word, what do they bring to the table that hyperscalers don't?
I'd say new thinking, right? First and foremost, they're thinking about the problem space where they don't have an entrenched either location strategy, like technology stack or customer base. And they're really focused first and foremost around how do we solve for the customer's need for generating and using AI as quickly as possible. And so, that agility of a fresh start is incredibly powerful.
Okay, and last question. Besides your own booth here, booth 1030 at GTC, what's the one piece of tech or a session that you've seen that's actually surprised you here at GTC?
Across the board, I think, to me, we're still in the early stages of robotics, but it's mind-blowing how far it's advanced from last year. Just the sophistication and accuracy of all the motions of it, it's pretty impressive.
All right, thanks for that. Then, John, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks again for the time today. I really appreciate it.
All right, so on behalf of John Lin from Equinix, I'm Zeus Kerravala from CPM Research, and thanks for watching. Give us a like and also hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast.